All right, so today I'm going to be doing a short review of the GEEK N500 Lite case. This is a mini ITX case from the company called GEEK. They are based out of Taiwan. So just for an idea of cases that it's similar to in the mini ITX space, you have the Dan case C4 SFX, which is very similar in size and specs. And then also it's commonly compared to the Incase M1, which it is slightly smaller to in terms of volume, but also a very similar layout on the inside. So let's start with looking at case dimensions. The case itself on the outside is 166 millimeters in width, 289 millimeters in depth, and then 250 millimeters in height. In imperial units, that's 6.53 inches by 9.84 inches by 11.37 inches. In terms of total volume, which is how a lot of mini ITX cases are measured, it is 11.99 liters, so right around that 12-liter mark. It is, I would say it's pretty mid-range for most of the small cases. They range from anywhere from small form factor starts around 20 liters to down to 4 liters. So it's right in the middle area. It's a very nice form factor, easy to transport, and it works really well. Let's talk about support. So this case supports a variety of hardware, mostly full-size components, obviously with the exception of the power supply and the motherboard. Let me open up the case and then we will talk about that. Okay, so talking about support, we're going to start with GPU clearance. It supports GPUs, graphics cards, up to 285 millimeters in length, and it only supports 2 slot cards. Now, you can do more of a 2.5 slot card with the larger cooler, but you will need to remove the fans at the bottom to make room for that. Cards like the MSI Gaming X range are more of 2.5 slot cards, and they won't fit in this case without the fans at the bottom removed and either replaced with slim fans or no fans at all. For the CPU cooler, this case supports CPU coolers up to 135 millimeters in height, as well as a 92 millimeter AIO, which really can only be bought from the company Asetek. But those are available if you are interested in using them. In my build here, I used the Chromax Noctua U9S. It's a 92 millimeter CPU cooler. I'm not 100% sure. I don't remember the height on it, but it works really well to cool my 8700K. For motherboard form factor, this case supports both mini ITX and mini DTX. So if you don't know, mini DTX is basically just a taller version of a mini ITX board. It has the same width, but a larger height. All right. So for PSU form factor, it supports both SFX and SFXL power supplies. When you have the SFXL power supply in, you are limited to a 215 millimeter graphics card. So keep that in mind if you're purchasing your parts for this. For drive support, now this case supports 2 2.5 inch drives from the factory. Right here, actually, I don't have it installed. Right here, in front of the power supply, there's mounting holes right here for a mounting plate that supports your drives. It supports 2 2.5 inch drives right there in the front. But I have not chosen to use that for my 2.5 inch drive. I actually mounted my drive behind the motherboard, and I'll show you that in just a moment. And if you do 2 drives here in the front, and then in combination with either 1 or 2 drives mounted behind the motherboard with command strips that's not officially supported, you can put as much as 4 2.5 inch drives in this case. Also, this case supports as many M.2 drives as your motherboard supports. Yeah, that's the drive support. For fan support, it supports 2 120 millimeter full-size fans down at the bottom, given you have a strictly 2-slot graphics card. It also supports a 92 millimeter fan here in the rear, and then a 120 millimeter by 15 slimline fan that mounts up at the top above the CPU cooler, which I don't have installed in my build, but that is an option if you want. A small tip, if you are thinking about installing more fans than this or even this amount of fans, I would recommend buying a fan splitter. My motherboard only has two fan connectors, so I was quite limited on that. So when I installed the 4-pin fan hub, I was able to power all my fans correctly. As for cooling performance, it is relatively good in this case. I'll go over my specs real quick, and then we'll talk about some benchmarks that I ran just on temperatures. So in my system, I'm running a i7 8700K. It's at stock voltage and stock frequencies. I haven't overclocked it yet, but I plan on it. And then for my graphics card, I have an RTX 2060 Super. It's the MSI Ventus OC version, and I have an overclock of 150 megahertz on the core and 550 megahertz on the memory. So keep those overclocks in mind when we are looking at our thermal performance. Oh, sorry. On the CPU also, I'm using the Noctua U9S cooler. Once again, I have two 120 millimeter Be Quiet Silent Wings 3 fans down at the bottom that are direct intake into the GPU. And then I have that one slimline 92 millimeter Noctua exhaust fan in the rear. Okay, so I ran some thermal tests on this system just to stress it in the case, just to see how the thermal performance was. And I would say it was pretty adequate. I never have to worry about mine. I did a 30-minute burn test using both IDA64 and Furmark to stress fully both the GPU and the CPU at the same time. Now, keep in mind, this is not a real-world scenario, basically ever, and you will almost never be stressing them completely simultaneously. But with both of those being stressed completely, my CPU actually reached a peak of 89 degrees Celsius, which is a lot hotter than I am usually comfortable with, but that was just a freak peak, and it averaged around 82 degrees Celsius throughout the test. And then my graphics card reached a max of 74 degrees Celsius and averaged around 72 degrees Celsius for that test. Now, keep in mind, this was a 30-minute burn-in test, and it is absolutely not realistic or a common scenario that you'll find yourself in. Especially probably not with a mini ITX system. Now, I also ran a Cinebench test. I ran for thermals. I ran 5 consecutive tests just to give the CPU some time to burn in. After 5 consecutive tests, my CPU reached a max of 74 degrees Celsius. And I tried running some more tests after that to see if it would go up, and it wouldn't go up anymore. Next, I ran a Heaven benchmark for 25 minutes just to try to get the graphics card to kind of heat up to a level at which it would during a gaming test, and kind of max out there. And after 25 minutes, my GPU reached a max of 73 degrees Celsius with those 2 direct intake fans onto it, and the stock fan curve, obviously. And then I did some heavy gaming tests, so just for more real-world scenarios, for what a lot of people are going to be doing with their computers. And so for my gaming tests, I don't necessarily have a lot of brand new games. I have Call of Duty Cold War, which is the newest game I have, and then I also tested Battlefield 1. So with Call of Duty Cold War, I played for about an hour, and I reached a max of 73 degrees on the GPU and 71 degrees on the CPU. And then after about an hour in Battlefield 1, I reached a max of 73 degrees on the GPU once again and 68 degrees on the CPU this time. This is with an ambient temperature of right around 21 degrees Celsius, anywhere from 21 to 22 degrees Celsius. So keep that in mind. Now, talking about cable management. In this case, cable management is difficult, but it's not impossible. It definitely would be a lot easier if you used the included drive mounting plate that goes right here, because it essentially covers up this entire section right here, and you can hide cables behind it. Now, let me take the back off, and I'll show you kind of what I did with my cable management. Okay, so looking at my cable management, I really, I didn't use that front mounting plate, so I was very, I wouldn't say limited in places that I could hide cables, but I was more pressured on how to control my cables. Then again, I'm a neat freak and a cable management freak, so I like to have it as clean as possible. And so this is kind of how my build turned out. In this case, I think it's pretty clean. Because of the way that the case is, there's not too much room to really put cables behind the motherboard and kind of shove them away. So you kind of have to shove most of your cables right here in either above if you have a longer GPU or next to if you have a shorter graphics card. So your cables kind of need to go right here up against this front panel. Now, obviously with this case, the side panels are extremely dark. They are the smoked tint. And they only sell them like that. They don't sell a clear version. So cable management is not necessarily as important as it would be in a case with, say, a tempered glass or a clear acrylic side panel, because, well, you can't see into the case when you have the side panels on. Now, lighting wise, I don't have any lights in my build at all. But if you do have lights, you are able to see those RGB elements actually through the smoked side panel, and that's the only thing you're able to see. So you're not able to see the actual components inside. Just the lights, though, which is very subtle, and I think it looks very good in the builds that do have lighting in them. Now, if you are super worried about cable management, like I am, there are some options you can take to make your build look cleaner. So what I did, for example, is I took the stock cables that came with my EVGA 550 power supply, and I actually installed some clear cable combs to help control the graphics card cable and the CPU, or not the CPU, the motherboard 24-pin cable. It just helped control them, make them look easier, or make them look better, and it made them easier to work with actually once I removed the stock wraps on the cables. If you are thinking about putting in custom cables, this case doesn't not support custom cables, but they are not made for this case at all. If you're looking at cable extensions, like sleeved cable extensions, you won't have room in this case to put them, especially if you want them to serve their function, because sleeve cable extensions generally are to make the build look better, and in this case it would just clog things up and you wouldn't be able to make it look good. Now, if you want custom cables, obviously it can be done. You can use companies like Cable Mod, and if you are able to find the exact measurements, they will make cables to your exact measurements, but that puts a lot of pressure on you to get those measurements right, or else your cables won't work. Also, Cable Mod cables will be very expensive. Okay. Now, build experience. My build experience was actually spread out over several weeks because I was dumb and did not, I wasn't dumb. The postal service was dumb, and my power supply was 2 weeks late. You can't finish this build really without having all the pieces. Because of the way that the build comes, or because of the way that the case comes in the mail, you really need to assemble this case with all the pieces on hand. It's not necessarily like a big case where you can just throw the pieces in and then remove them at will. With this case, because you have to build it yourself, and just because of how small it is, you have to have all of the pieces on hand when you build it, because every single piece goes in at a certain stage. So for example, if I wanted to take my power supply out, I would have to take part of the case apart, and kind of backtrack on some steps because of the way that this case goes together. Time-wise, the build took, if you just sat down and did it, it would take you about an hour to an hour and a half, not including time for cable management. But like I said, it's not the most important thing in the world because you can't see in the glass side panels, the acrylic side panels. Okay, travel potential. I found that it fits nicely in a large backpack. So I actually have a just a backpack right here that I already had. And my case actually fits pretty nicely in the large pocket here. And I'm also able to put all of everything else from my setup in there except for my monitor, of course. Now, one thing I would recommend when traveling with this case is I actually put the computer inside of a pillowcase. That's just because the side panels are acrylic, and so I don't want anything to really scratch the side panels or do any sort of damage to the case itself while traveling. Now, discussing cost. This is a cheap case. That doesn't mean it's cheap in quality, but it's cheap in price. Those cutbacks in price come from the fact that the entire case is made of acrylic. It's made of hard acrylic, which is surprisingly scratch resistant. I've had the case about 2 months, and I have 0 major scratches on it, despite traveling with it. I would say probably about 6 or 7 times at this point. Now, it is composed of the acrylic panels on the outside, and then with a aluminum frame that runs all around right here that helps give it some stability. And the case actually feels very solid. It feels very, very very high quality and very nice. But yeah, so it's $69 plus $29 shipping to the United States. It ships from Taiwan, where Geek's headquarters are, and it actually got to my door in less than 48 hours after clicking the buy button from Taiwan. So that's from Taiwan to Alabama in 48 hours, which is pretty cool. Now, when we're talking about what comes in the box, when you receive it, you will get the case unassembled, so it's been flat packed. Each of these acrylic pieces is still covered in the plastic sheet that you will have to peel off for protection while shipping. And then you get the all of the different aluminum frame pieces. They are all, how do I say it? They're all in a bag. And then you will also get a container similar to a pill organizer with all these screws in it. They're all organized by the type of screw. And then actually each screw, it comes with extra screws for most types of screws that are involved in the building of the case. So if you happen to strip a screw, which unfortunately is quite easy, with the screws that they give you, you should have some extras in most cases. Also in the box is the power button and the front USB 3.0. So that's actually all that's on the front of this case is the power button right there, and then the front USB 3.0 cable or port. So those come in the case, and then you obviously assemble those. Or you don't assemble those, you install those when you are putting the case together. And then lastly, it comes with 4 case feet. Now, they are not very tall, but they do the job. Okay, what's not in the box? So things not included in the box are actually printed instructions. So with a lot of things that you have to put together, it comes with, obviously, instructions on a piece of paper. That's not included with this case. It includes a small, almost like a business card that has a QR code on it, and then the QR code will take you to the manual online. And then you will use that manual to then put your computer together, your case together. And then also not included, it does not come with any fan filters of any kind. Which is somewhat unfortunate. So if you want those, you're going to have to DIY those and make them yourself. And then also it does not come with any included fans, which is somewhat unfortunate but understandable for the price. Now, noise levels for this case, I have found that my case is extremely quiet. I have the noise levels for both the idle conditions, the load conditions, and the ambient conditions. So the ambient conditions in this room, the noise levels sit around 40.5 decibels. That just comes from the air conditioning running. And then at idle, the computer actually sits just about 1.5 decibels above that. It's completely inaudible when I'm sitting only about 24 inches away from the computer itself, and it's sitting at 41.9 decibels. And then under complete load, it is audible, but I would not consider it loud at all, sitting just at 49.8 decibels, so about 9 decibels over ambient. Okay, so that kind of concludes it. I have a few other notes that I noticed when I was building the computer. So the I/O shield on the back, it does not clip in. It doesn't clip in like it does on normal cases. You don't push it until it pops. It just kind of sits there. It is secure. It's not moving at all, but it doesn't clip in. It just kind of fits into that slot, and then when you put the motherboard in, it holds it in. Like I said, it is very secure. It's not going anywhere, but that is something to keep in mind so you don't think that yours is broken when you get it in the mail. Next, you may need a 180 degrees graphics card power connector. So as you can see right here, in mine, I have this 180 degree adapter right here that just allows me basically to use this case or to use this graphics card in this case. And I feel like this might be the case with most graphics cards. So because of the way that this card is laid out, the power connector is not recessed at all into the PCB. So if I were to run the regular power supply cable and turn it over and plug it in, then I would not be able to close the side panel. All right. Thanks for tuning in to this case review. Hope this answered any questions you had about this case. I know no one on YouTube has done a video on this, so that's why I am. If you have any other comments or questions, just leave them down in the comments, and I will do my best to look at them and reply to them. All right. Thanks.